My name is Dandy Wellington. I'm a band leader, entertainer, and style activist born, raised, and currently living in Harlem, New York City. Regarding the way I dress and why this particular style is something that I've gravitated towards and really embodied over the past 10 years is because little bits of it have always been a part of my life. Watching movie musicals and listening to jazz, surrounded by the great photography of James Van Der Zee, seeing the paintings of Romare Bearden. So much of this jazz age life is a big part of me growing up. As a result, I gravitated to it wholeheartedly. As always, we always evolve. All of us have a real style evolution over the years, but eventually I really came back to a style of classic menswear and embracing even more so vintage styles, detachable collars, bow ties, sock garters, watch chains, things like that. In the early 20th century, that was so much a part of men's wardrobe, and of course hats, of course great hats. An outfit's not complete without a hat, in my opinion. And so I wear one every day, no matter the occasion. The real truth about dressing in historic dress or vintage that a lot of people may not understand who don't do it is that so much of it is for the wearer. I mean, I would dress this way if I was around nobody. It's the way I love to be. A good friend of mine says, this is how I people. This is absolutely how I people. But there is also nothing better than going to an event with 30, 40, 100 people who love vintage as much as you do and will go out in style. And we all get to appreciate the little details, the little touches that we're all nerds about, we're all obsessed about. So there's nothing greater than being able to come together with people who really love this style, who really love this way of living, this crazy vintage life that we've subscribed to, which is fraught with sewing projects and mending projects and finding things and pouring through history books and apparel art illustrations and old photographs. But then the result is an appreciation for clothing that will last, but also a better understanding of the history that we are a result of. You know, it's interesting in this vintage community, this incredible world vintage community that we have, you know, there's people in Japan and Australia and London, New Orleans and LA and New York, Chicago. There's so many people that really believe in this vintage community and retro culture and things like that. But yet there aren't that many people of color who are involved, who embody this love of vintage, mainly because it wasn't a great time. But there's so much power, especially in the Black experience. There's so much power in that time. The things that were created out of strife, out of hardship, jazz and swing dancing and incredible works, people like Langston Hughes and Zora Neale Hurston. So much of that hardship reaped such innovation. A big part of my mission every day is to honor that history. I'm born and raised in Harlem, the Harlem Renaissance. This is where it happened. Part of my existence in this vintage community is to continue to speak truth to that history, honor it. So, vintage style, not vintage values. I should say first that I did not originate this phrase at all. Based on my research, it originated in two places. Facebook groups that were speaking out against reproduction brands that were releasing designs that were insensitive to minorities and people of color. The second was a rallying cry within the vintage community around the 2016 Women's March. Out of that, people started to use the phrase as a hashtag, and it grew from there. Vintage style, not vintage values is a motto, credo, doctrine, mantra, daily affirmation that simply says that though my clothes and my style may be old-timey, my values and my perspective on social issues are not. It's to say that I'm against racism, I'm against misogyny, I'm against bigotry. I respect the bodies, perspectives, and choice of LGBTQ plus women, people who are differently abled, and that I acknowledge and respect the original custodians of the land that I'm currently living on. The Native Americans who existed in abundance in this country before settlers, if we're gonna call it that, settlers came here. So many people will come up to me at events or say online, don't you wish that you lived back then? My answer is wholeheartedly no. No, not at all. Though I certainly love the music is a big part of what I do for a living. The film, the fashion, etc. I would not be able to live the life that I do if I lived in the past. My people were persecuted. My people were enslaved. People of color were not safe in their everyday lives. So in no way, shape, or form do I imagine that it would be fun or there were better times. Given the language, the perfect language to express how I've always felt, I now wear it as a badge of honor. Vintage style, not vintage values, absolutely. 100%. A big part of my love of vintage is the cuts, is the fabric. You know, these clothes were not only built to last, but they were built to be admired, not only by the wearer, but by those who observe the wearer. These are plush, robust, rich, hardy fabrics. In hindsight, when thinking about vintage, there is so much emphasis placed on the bold moments within particular eras. Of course, there's the flapper dress. But for a large part of the 1920s, the flapper dress wasn't the only thing happening. Certainly, in microcosms, it may not have been happening at all. So much of America was not in a sort of city mindset. When looking at fashion through the lens of history, we so often see the broad strokes. But the great thing about really embodying this fashion and this vintage style is you get to dig into the nuance. You get to really appreciate the details, the trends, the things that happened for a moment in one town because of one tailor who decided, let's do this a little bit differently. Those details, that nerdery, that magical nerdery of vintage style, it's electric. So many of us who love this vintage life are historians in our own right. We may not teach at universities, we may not gather hundreds of people to listen to us speak, but we are historians. We love history. We want to understand it, and we want to understand it not just through facts and figures and stories, but also in a tactile way. Understanding the clothes, understanding old things. There's an appreciation there. But there's absolutely not an ambition to go back to the way things were, because for most of us, they weren't great. What's up, guys? Thank you so much for watching this video. I feel so strongly about the vintage community and our ability to see history through experiencing it in real time. A big thank you to Rachel Maksy for asking me these questions and giving me a reason to answer them again. And if you're someone who feels like you have no place in the vintage community because in history people like you were ostracized and marginalized, it's not true. Your very presence in this community allows for us to have more information to properly and accurately process history. So thank you. Thank you to my patrons. Like and subscribe, guys. Have a good one.